Tonight on Free Minds TV, New Hampshire sees the highest growth rate of any state in the Northeast. We'll also be getting into a story out of the state of Florida, where a state trooper killed a 91-year-old man in a motor vehicle accident. Plus, we'll be getting into wasteful government spending and how it relates to the Grateful Dead. That plus a whole lot more coming up tonight on Free Minds TV.
Welcome to episode 188 of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. It is Toby here with you.
And Nick.
And we have a whole lot to get into, Nick. We are going to be getting into pork spending, as well as state trooper killing that old grandpa, and a whole lot more. But first, I want to invite the viewers to log on to our website, freemindstv.com. There's so much stuff there. I'm surprised more people don't go there because people do watch the show. They download the show. Tons of people are subscribing on iTunes and downloading the audio version. Well, if you're listening to this audio version, go and watch some of the archives. Check out some of the other free content that's there. Thousands of hours, all for free, up at freemindstv.com or freemindsmedia.org, however you want to get there. Google us. Just go on our website. There's so much cool stuff, ways to help the show, contact the show, tell us what you think, and much more. All right, Nick, let's get right into it. Get into the show, get into some of the stories. I want to start here with wasteful government spending. It doesn't really get much easier to poke fun at the government for just pure waste when it then looking at some of the pork projects that are out there. This is coming from a new report that cites $11.5 billion worth of what it calls wasteful government spending in the year 2010, including more than $500,000 to digitize Grateful Dead items. Senator Tom Coburn's Waste Book 2010 highlights $615,000 in federal funds to digitize photographs, t-shirts, and concert tickets belonging to the Grateful Dead. The money went to the University of California at Santa Cruz, the band's chosen spot to archive all their material, and will be supposedly free to the public. Congress continues to find new and extravagant ways to waste your money, the report is quoted as saying.
What the hell does Congress have to do with that anyway? I mean, if a university wants to do a historical archiving project, I can see that as part of, say, a history major, there's probably a lot of different majors.
How about fans? How about all those deadheads,
right.
Nick?
I mean, it's the internet age. How hard is it to take the old concert tickets,
scan it,
that you have
That's
taken
what we're talking
around
about.
from
That's what we're talking about,
back
by
in
the
the 70s, and put it in a scanner and create a PDF that'll be on Google in the Internet Archive forever.
Right. That's
for free.
What we're talking about. $615,000.
It's probably because people in Congress, a lot of them probably still don't really understand how the internet
digitize?
works.
Oh, we're going to digitize T-shirts. No, that just means you're putting it in a scanner or taking a photograph of it. That's all digitizing it means, is scanning it.
Basically taking a picture.
Right. It's going to cost $615,000.
Oh, $615,000, yeah, a little more.
It doesn't. The report doesn't stop there, Nick. It also cites $700,000 to study cow gas. Yes, cow farts. Nearly $1 million to study cow farts, as well as $200,000 to study, quote, ambiguous comments made by politicians. You need $200,000 to do that? Just check out all the blogs on the internet. Do it every day for free. $79,000 to throw a party at the Brookfield Zoo for suburban flood victims. $79,000 for flood victims at a suburban zoo? How about pump out their basements if you're going to throw money at them? $440,000 for a West Suburban Yorkville office for former Speaker of the House Dennis Hasser. I don't even know who he is. Anyways, he's getting nearly $500,000 to build himself a suburban Yorkville office. I mean, that
sounds nice. It must be nice to be able to appropriate other people's money to build yourself a new office like that. I wonder how many offices he has.
People hear pork all the time, Nick. What it is essentially your congressman goes in there and there's all these bills being passed into law. They pass thousands and thousands of pages of law every single day. And in order, some politicians, your senators, your congressmen, say, well, I'll vote yes on this bill, but only if I get $615,000 coming to my district for this Grateful Dead digitizing thing, and then we'll pass this military spending bill or something like that. Or then, after we have $79,000 to throw a party for the flood victims, leave their houses filled with water. We need a party to boost their spirits. Then I'll vote for this other bill and pat you on the back.
The thing is, while pork spending is extremely wasteful, these earmarks, they're actually a very small amount of the total budget.
Right.
Now, the thing that makes pork so probably more insidious than people realize, beyond the fact that it's essentially just out-and-out patronage, it's basically, give me money and I'll vote this way. It also incentivizes politicians to vote for, most of the legislation going through Washington is new legislation that appropriates more money. So in the example you gave, Toby, where an earmark is slipped in by a congressman in exchange for support, they slip it into a bill that they don't necessarily want to vote for, but they know is likely to pass. But with their earmark in there, they're willing to vote for it.
Yeah.
So it's a way to get politicians to vote for legislation that they don't like and don't agree with, except for the fact that there are earmarks in there.
Yeah.
So it actually probably results in more spending from all these big spending bills that pass. I think it porks less than it's like half.
Oh, it's barely anything. This is only talking about $11.5 billion worth of pork, and we're talking about the
most
budget
government
being
spending
trillions
is on things like Social Security, the Department of Defense, like
killing brown people. Don't forget.
Well, Department of Defense.
Oh, yeah.
That's like there's a few big programs that eat up like most of the budget.
Right.
And like between welfare and warfare, there goes most of your budget.
Taking care of the ill and blowing up the young. Right? That's what governments are for.
Right, that is what they're for.
Anyways,
they do.
It's just a way, so I thought it was important to highlight some of the things that your government's doing with your hard-earned tax dollars. Find it trouble to pay the rent bill this month? Maybe struggling to make that mortgage payment? Well, nearly over $500,000 being spent on digitizing Grateful Dead work. And I like the Grateful Dead. I'm not trying to down that. But I think there's enough. I like some of their songs. I think there's enough fans out there that can take pictures of old T-shirts and concert tickets and other hippie paraphernalia and put it on the internet for all to see, so they don't actually have to travel to the University of Santa Cruz in California. Am I wrong on this? Open to the public. Well, I live in New Hampshire. Maybe if my congressman, I should ask him to have a bill to fly me over there.
They should have a program to fly everybody in the state of New Hampshire who wants to
Everybody
go.
in the country, Nick, this is a federal program. Everybody should have the right to see this memorabilia digitized. So everybody should get a free plane ticket and a hotel room for the night. Anyways, it's ridiculous. But as you said, Nick, it is insidious because it incentivizes politicians to vote for bills they know they shouldn't.
Right.
But they're bringing home the bacon, Nick. So when they go back, one other thing it does is it helps get politicians elected again and again and again.
Right.
Because he can go back to his district and he goes, I brought home so much bacon this time. I got millions of dollars flowing from the government, free money for all these sweet projects. Look at this bridge we have. Remember the bridge to nowhere, $200 million for a bridge for like 50 people in Alaska.
Sweet bridge, though.
Sweet bridge, but hey.
Bridge, get some votes.
Hey, those 50 people, they're all going to be voting for him. No more barges for them.
Still Alaska is going to be voting for whoever paid for that.
Anyways, bringing home the bacon, I don't like it. I don't like anything the federal government does. So
pretty much, no.
Anyways, Nick, it's time to move right along. Let's get into killing grandpas.
I don't know if he was actually a grandfather. He was an elderly gentleman in the state of Florida. Believe it or not, there are quite a few old people in Florida. An Orange County deputy caused a crash last summer that killed a 91-year-old man who was on his way to the hospital for his daily visit with the sick and dying. It's about as tragic a story as you can get. The Florida Highway Patrol said. Actually, apparently, I think I said in the intro this was a trooper. It was a deputy that caused the crash. The state troopers, I believe, investigated. Deputy Melinda Miller, who will lose her driver's license for at least 6 months, said Highway Patrol Sergeant Kim Montez Miller is accused of speeding, going 86 miles per hour in a 40-mile-per-hour zone, and failing to use her emergency lights or siren. Both are civil infractions, not crimes. What about negligent homicide? In most places, Toby, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't know the laws in Florida, but if you're drunk and you crash your car because you're drunk, if you cause a death, you go to prison because that's negligent homicide. It wasn't simply an accident. Going 86 miles per hour in a 40-mile-per-hour zone, even with lights and sirens. I can think of very few times when that's
Yeah, why is that necessary?
Why is it necessary?
No, it's not necessary, Nick.
Unless there's some Hollywood scenario where they're trying to, there's an axe murder on the loose and this is the only cop. That stuff doesn't happen in real life.
Right, ambulances don't need to drive this fast, Nick. Fire trucks don't need to drive this fast, and they're actually going to help people and save people, put out fires. But you don't see them zipping by at 110 miles an hour.
I mean, they'll drive above the speed limit,
right, but at a safe, reasonable speed above the speed limit.
I've seen cops do this. Granted, here in Keene, when I've seen them do this, they are running lights and sirens, and there's multiple cars running.
But they zip.
They fly. I mean, I've seen them going down surface streets that there might be 2 lanes, but there's really not a whole lot of time to move. When you're going 70 or 80 miles per hour through town, unless it's a very much a life and death situation, there's no reason to be going that fast. The odds of killing somebody over the years of responding that quickly are probably higher than the odds of saving a life.
Well, Nick, it's why a lot of counties out there, all across the United States, have laws prohibiting police officers from pursuing people in high-speed chases in order to protect people's lives. Because the chances, is it really worth catching that person immediately? I mean, chances are you have the license plate. You can catch them later, put out a bench warrant for their arrest. There's no reason to be speeding through urban areas at 90 miles an hour to, well, I don't know what, crash them into the side of a tree or something? I mean, what's the end goal in chasing people this quickly?
I'm sure it's an adrenaline rush to chase somebody at 90
right,
miles per hour.
You can catch them
what's
later.
a safety benefit?
You can always catch them later. There was an incident right here in Keene a couple weeks back where some stupid teenager robbed a 6-pack of beer from the local grocery store at 9 a.m. And then the police had a high-speed chase throughout Keene that ended in a couple of cops getting hurt, damaged cars. They put out spike strips, and they finally dragged this teen in. And I was looking at some of the comments on the news stories, and so many, it was split. Half the people were like, what the hell, you got him on video, you have his car, you know exactly who the kid is, let him drive home, and drive over and arrest him, instead of having these high-speed chases. But it was overwhelming, the amount of people out there, who are probably some of them watching this show now, and saying, this kid broke the law and he needs to be punished, we need to catch him now. Okay, broke the law, but we know who he is. We can still catch him. We've got his license plate on tape. We've got his face on tape. Do we really need to have a high-speed chase throughout Keene in the early morning hours? Throwing down spike strips, getting officers hurt, having to go to the hospital, having cop cars bashed up because you're crashing into them to pull them over? You could just go get him in a couple hours. When he's drunk, will probably be a little bit easier. Might be passed out.
Right, he stole a 6-pack, so presumably he's going to drink.
He's just an 18-year-old.
Yeah,
he just couldn't buy beer because he's not 21 yet, so he had to steal it. I'm
not saying what the hell is he going to do? I mean, no, he should have faced charges of some kind.
But is it worth that?
Right.
You can get him anyways. Do you really need to have this high-speed chase costing the city of Keene, I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars in the end here. Now the kid's got felonies on his record instead of just making a stupid mistake and maybe learning from it, getting arrested for stealing. Now he's got felonies, multiple ones. He's probably going to be in and out of the system for life now. Is it really worth it? So many people, yes, yes, yes. He broke the law, he needs to be punished. Broke the law, needs to be punished. We need to go out and get him with whatever he's worth. Shouldn't there be a difference between someone who's murdered people and someone who stole a 6-pack of beer? Do we still need to have high-speed chases?
Well, and I think it's just, I think part of this mentality is it's people watching too much cops on TV. I mean, that's not the purpose. That's not why law enforcement exists. They should be there to keep the peace, to keep people from doing things like stealing. Yes, that should be illegal. You should get arrested.
But people will always do it, Nick. People will always
steal.
They
will. I mean, but they are there to provide some kind of remedy for that. The kid should have been arrested.
And they could have arrested him, Nick.
Right. I mean, he didn't hold a knife to anybody's throat. He wasn't going to run. What teenager who stole a 6-pack of beer is going to run for the border?
No, he's going home to drink it.
Oh, I got a whole 6-pack of beer. Time to get out of the country. Time to head for Mexico. It's not going to happen.
He wants to go drink his beer.
So the chase was completely unnecessary. I'm sure it was fun, but it was also dangerous. So,
and it cost a lot of money. How about that?
I'm sure it was fun.
For these chases.
It's got to be tempting, though. If you had lights and you get to chase, somebody starts running,
you get to
job,
Nick.
100 miles per
hour. So does being a DEA agent and getting that adrenaline rush, kicking down doors. And
doesn't make it sensible or right.
Being in a real-life video game, man, Nick, that's a lot of fun, especially when you're half the country considers you a hero for it.
Right.
It sounds like a great job, but are you really being a hero when you're having a high-speed chase over a 6-pack of beer? Maybe it was a 12-pack. I just said 6-pack. Maybe it was even
could have been a whole 30 rack.
Nick. I don't know if he got out with much more.
Whole $20 we're talking
Let's
about
just
here.
say he had actually held the place up at gunpoint. We still know who he is, and we can still get him. So that's what we're talking about here. Is it worth the risk to have these high-speed chases through town when the end result is not going to be different? It's not like it means we can't catch the guy. You can put a bench warrant out and you'll catch him. It won't be that immediate gratification. It won't be that adrenaline rush, but you can still catch him. And in this case, I think we've definitely departed from the story, but what it comes down to is apparently there's no consequences if you do mess up.
Well, here's what happened, just so we do wrap up the story here, because what happened here is this deputy did crash into this old man who had pulled out into an intersection. Supposedly the old man had stopped at the stop sign, according to what I'm getting here from the Florida State Police. He had stopped at the stop sign, then pulled into the intersection. So it sounds like he did pull out in this deputy's way, but she was doing 86 and a 40, not running lights and sirens. So going that fast, it would be hard for anyone necessarily to catch that, especially if you're a 91-year-old man. And the state police blamed the crash and solely on the sheriff's deputy, who is only going to be getting, well, I think she's going to be getting some kind of desk duty, and she loses her driver's license for 6 months, keeps her job, doesn't even get fired. Other people would go to prison. That's the thing, is that I'm not a lawyer, but in the state of Florida, you'd at least be looking at defending yourself from some kind of a negligent or vehicular manslaughter charge if you were an average citizen. So why does a deputy get to do this when they are negligent? They are negligent. Maybe they were doing their job. Maybe they had an important crime scene to get to. They didn't need to be driving 90 miles per hour in a 40.
No.
And if they did, they need to run lights and sirens. That's why police departments spend thousands and thousands of dollars equipping these cars.
You're a police.
Well, Isn't that
the
safety.
Fun part,
It
Nick?
is for safety,
and
now,
it's fun. You get to zoom around with lights and sirens. That's why kids dream about.
I like the
police.
European two-tone ones. Just dee-noo, dee-noo.
No, I don't know. I want all the bells and whistles.
Oh yeah.
Lots of lights, flashing, blind the oncoming traffic so they can't see. Distract me. You know,
some of those cop cars now, they
that's the
light
thing.
up.
We say that it's for safety. I think at this point, a lot of it's for fun, because when I see, it's so distracting for me. I see flashy lights, and they are mesmerizing to me.
They are very bright. I mean,
they're very bright.
A lot of lights.
And I like watching them.
The old
zoom
cop
around.
cars with a couple of spinning lights.
That's all you really need. At this point, I think a lot of it's overkill. But I mean, it's fun. I mean, that's what I'd want to do if I was a
I haven't
cop.
looked at the safety study, so maybe it is safer.
Okay, I know for me and my eyeballs, it's very bright and distracting. But hey, that's just me. Still, if I was a cop, I'd want to zoom around all the bells and whistles, flashing like a big old strobe light. If I just one, your car could just be a strobe light. How's that?
It's one of the perks of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. After all, you're a hero.
Do you want to get into this story about New Hampshire?
I'd
After
love
all,
to,
that is
Nick.
where we brought. I know not all of our viewers are in New Hampshire, but this story it's not just a story of interest to people in New Hampshire, because I think it points out a few things.
Yeah, the census. We love the census. This is census data gathering, right? This is what this all comes from?
Yeah.
Yeah, the census.
I'm not actually going to talk about the census. I
but
don't think that's a very big issue to people.
Well, that's where this data came from, Nick.
Yeah, I know.
All right, we'll leave the census.
I don't like. I mean, okay. People complain about the census. People defend the census.
I never got the census coming to my house.
Damn.
They didn't count me.
No, we did. We got a quick, but it was like a short one. I can remember one year, my family got a really long. When I was younger, 10 years ago.
I feel unrepresented now, Nick.
Oh, well, I guess they didn't count you. According to the U.S. Census, the population is now 308,745,538. So
plus me.
Plus Toby.
Plus
so
me.
it's 539.
39, yes.
Unless they counted someone else twice.
And my wife, though.
Oh, 540. But anyway, obviously the numbers aren't necessarily exact here. Not everybody answers the census. You didn't answer it either?
Man, wait, out of the 3 people in this room, only a third of them got it.
Anyway, here's what the numbers say, whether they're entirely accurate or not. New Hampshire continued to, and I think the trends here are probably accurate, even if the census gets the numbers horribly wrong. New Hampshire continued a 5-decade trend of having the highest growth in the Northeast, according to the U.S. Census data released Tuesday. Northeast growing slower than most other places in the country, but New Hampshire grew 6.5% population-wise since the year 2000. Other states around us not growing nearly as fast. Nobody in the Northeast shrank, but it looks like a lot of people. One of the reasons for this gain in residents is that a lot of people are leaving Massachusetts and coming to New Hampshire. And I think that that's a trend that you see with New Hampshire in the Northeast. You've got a very low tax state surrounded by relatively high tax states. And I think you get a lot of people moving here for tax reasons. I mean, sure, there's other reasons why people move to
We
New
got the
Hampshire
Free
too.
State Project too. That's probably a huge. Well, that's a few people.
That's
At least
couple
1,000.
hundred. I could do the numbers here. I mean, yeah, 1,000. So it's statistically significant to like maybe 0.1% or something.
Whoa.
I have to do the numbers here, but I mean that's significant. But whether it's part of an organized project or not, people have moved to New Hampshire for a long time because it's a lower tax state and it offers certain advantages.
Well, that's nice, Nick. I wish these people could remember why they moved when they get here. Because a lot of
Well-
what you see is you get these people from Massachusetts coming up, and then they're like, well, I like the low taxes, but where are my services?
Right, and they don't realize that the reason
Well,
the
that's
taxes
why
are
you had
high
such high taxes. Can we put 2 and 2 together, folks? You got a lot of services. You're going to have to pay for them.
Right. And
There's no
unfortunately,
such thing as a free lunch.
Unfortunately, New Hampshire has become more like Massachusetts in the last 10 years. I mean, there's more government spending, there are more taxes, and we're looking more like Massachusetts now, too.
Well,
Despite the fact that they spend more money, our roads look like crap. Compared to what they were like when I was a kid, Toby, the roads seem like crap in the city of Keene and the state of New Hampshire. It's a dump, and that's what it looks like in Massachusetts, even though they tax so much, because they spend even more on all these social services that don't really do all that much good.
Well, I don't know, Nick.
And they can't even take care of the roads.
We are going to really have to buckle back down and get back to the New Hampshire way we were like 20 years ago or so, because all that federal money is drying up. In the same articles that I've seen surrounding this one, I keep on running across the articles of what will New Hampshire do without all that big old stimulus money? Because with the stimulus money, we paid for all sorts of programs, millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of programs, and this is true across the nation. New Hampshire is actually in a pretty good position compared to other states. But across the nation, so many states relied on stimulus money to pay for so many programs, so many new programs. Local governments as well. For example, we hired a bunch of new police officers that the federal government pays for a few years, and then we get to pay for them for the rest of ever.
Well, or you just fire them.
But they don't.
They don't do that, but who knows? I mean, there's at least a potential.
Well, they're going to have to do something, Nick, because you can't have the federal government's got that Federal Reserve that is very handy for printing off more money,
Right.
but it's much more
the feds can
difficult
go
for
into debt
much
as
bigger
long
debt
as they want.
Well, or to a certain extent, much longer.
Until economic law.
They've got a
basically
credit
guides
card
them.
that's like an open balance, kind of like celebrities. They have the black card or something
Right.
that has no limit.
Right.
We've got a limit here in New Hampshire. And those black cards, they actually do have a limit. They just say no limit, kind of like the Federal Reserve. The federal government has no limit. Of course, there's a limit. You can't run into debt forever. We've talked about that. But New Hampshire is going to be in trouble. We're going to, as well as every other state, we're going to have to tighten those belts, cut back on some of these programs, or watch our taxes go up, 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 up.
And two states that are in a lot more trouble than New Hampshire, Michigan and Nevada. Nevada has, I think it's actually right now the highest unemployment rate in the country. I think they're up to almost 15%. Michigan, obviously, most people who've been paying attention over the last couple of years know that Detroit is a rotting husk of a city. I mean, it's really a shadow of its former self. The whole state of Michigan not doing too well because they lost a lot of their industry and unemployment's rampant. And it's interesting to note here that the only two outliers, all other states showed a population increase anywhere from 0 to 29%. Every state except Nevada and Michigan. And I would assume that this is a symptom more than a cause. I think in Nevada you had a big boom that went bust, and now you have a lot of people who've moved in the last 10 years who don't have a job, because Nevada grew by 35% over the last 10 years. That's a lot. One of the worst off states financially speaking as far as the job market. Michigan, the only state in the country to shrink because people are getting the hell out of Detroit and other cities like it. So I just think it's interesting to point that out. And I think that over the next 10 years, I would expect that we're going to see more difficult times ahead of us. I don't know how severe they'll be, but in difficult times, it puts pressure on people to move. States where the economy is not doing well, states where the tax rate's going to explode, places like California. I mean, California is basically bankrupt. Either they're going to have to go up on taxes or keep taxes high and just totally trash services and let infrastructure fall apart.
The one thing I do
so
hope...
I wouldn't be surprised to see people start leaving California.
It's interesting. I hear both sides. Some analysts say, well, we would have had more movement if the economy was doing better because people would be able to afford to sell their houses and move. And then other people say, well, the reason people are moving so much is because, well, the economy is better and they're trying to find new places. Whatever it is, this is what I hope. I hope that people who realize that their governments are bloated and spending is out of control and it's causing unemployment to skyrocket and there's all these regulations. I hope that when they move to states like New Hampshire, and there's others out there with smaller governments, they remember why their governments failed. And that's because they got so big and out of control. And we're not that much better shape. We're going that same direction. But it really irks me when I see people come up here from, say, Massachusetts, for example, because they like the freedoms, because they like the low taxes.
They want to be able to own guns or not pay income tax.
And then they say, well, people don't buckle their seatbelts. That's crazy. It's lunacy. It's so dangerous not to buckle your seatbelt. Yeah, well, we're a free people in a free country, in a free state, live free or die, and we feel that grown adults should be able to make that decision. You want social services, well, you're going to have to pay for them. That's through taxes.
And when you have a government that takes interest in the detail, just the inane details of everyday citizens' lives, when you have the government start making decisions like common sense decisions about whether you buckle up, things like that, that's when governments get bloated. Yeah. That's not their role. The government's there to keep crazy killers away from the rest of us and to keep the Russians away.
Yes, don't forget
that's what government's for.
A government that's big enough to give you everything is also a government that's big enough to take it all away, and it's also big enough to fail and take you down with it.
Right, and that's what's happening gradually, but it's happening here in the U.S.
We're out of time, Nick. Until next week, it has been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
And visit us at freemindstv.com. Until then, it's the last episode of 2010. When we see you next, it'll be a new year. Have a great night. Nick, I drew you a picture.
So you've joined the Free State Project and you're ready to make the move to New Hampshire and get active for liberty. But where should you make your new home?
Be sure to consider these 130 plus reasons to move to Keene.